Hello everyone, I'm Nick Hobden, partner and head of the employment team at Thompson and Passmore, and I'm joined today by Ben Stepney, partner in the team. We're here to talk about employee terminations of employment and settlement agreements. So imagine, if you will, employees spend more time at work in their waking hours than they do with their partners and families. That is the sad fact of life, and continuing after COVID, even when they work from home. The workplace and colleagues are such an integral part of our lives that we experience the highs and lows with our jobs. And sometimes circumstances lead to stress. Losing one's job feels like losing a friend or a family member. So much so that people who lose their jobs experience intense grief. And no one can really prepare you for that eventuality, the day when you're called into a meeting by management and are told that your job is at risk. And so that's really where they need to consider their position very carefully, having got the signal from management that management want to move the employee on. So the shock of facing the reality is that you may no longer be employed by the firm that you worked so hard for and were loyal to for such a long time. And it's very difficult. You may not take everything in at first. So what do you do about it? And at this point, I'm handing over to Ben to discuss what does an employee do in those circumstances.
Well, you've mentioned grief, you've mentioned shock, Nick. It can be a very difficult situation for any individual to face. The key advice for an employee in that situation is not to make any rash decisions, and nor should the employee be expected to make any rash decisions at that time. To do so could potentially be unfair and unlawful. Once you've got over that initial shock, it's important to digest what's been said, why has this situation come about, and what's going to happen next. And it might be that the employer has said that they'll follow up the meeting with written confirmation of what's been discussed and what happens next, which can suit both parties, particularly the employee, to digest what's been discussed and to start to get things in order for the next step.
Thanks, Ben. So what happens next?
It's important for the employee next to get some documentation together, find a copy of the employment contract and any updates, variations since. Find the employee handbook that might be relevant to redundancy or disciplinary. Find documents related to your benefit schemes, so you're ready to pass those on to a trade union advisor or a solicitor as and when you need to. Now, the employer may have said what's going to happen next. In a redundancy situation, it's likely there'll be a consultation process that's going to follow. And that's the employee's chance to hear again the reasons for the employer considering terminating their employment. And it's a process that, whilst intimidating, an employee should really engage in. This is your chance to put forward your side of the story, why you think your role shouldn't be made redundant, or what alternative role you think should be made available to you before any final decisions are made.
Thanks for that, Ben. But let's assume, for example, that the employer doesn't want to go through the process and is already saying to the employee, look, we don't want you around anymore. We think it's best for you to leave the organisation. What happens in that situation where they offer a package for the employee to leave on good terms?
Well, the first thing to do is look at what's being offered. Look at the package on offer. Think about what's important to you. Is it the notice period? Is it when employment is going to terminate? Is it how any benefits like medical insurance are going to be dealt with? It could be that you want to be free of any restrictive covenants preventing you from working for a competitor or working with the same clients at a future employer. You may also be particularly concerned about the reference your employer is going to give you. So some or all of those items will be covered in the employer's offer, which could be in a letter or maybe in a draft settlement agreement, which they're asking you to go and consider and ultimately sign up to.
Thanks, Ben. So Ben, you mentioned settlement agreement. Can you just now explain to us what a settlement agreement is?
It's a contract between the employer and employee that provides for the termination of the employment and the terms on which it will terminate. Legally, it's quite unique in that it is the only agreement in which an employee can agree to waive, so forego, any claims it might have against an employer related to their employment or its termination. In the settlement agreement, it would include those terms I just mentioned for the exit, notice period, benefits, last day in employment, any garden leave, etc., etc. But there are some safeguards in place for employees. You have to take independent legal advice on the terms of the agreement before it can be signed off, and your employer should also give you at least 10 days to consider the agreement, take advice, and come back with any negotiation.
Thanks, Ben. So you mentioned a 10-day period. Where does that come from? What's that all about?
It's a requirement of the ACAS Code of Practice on settlement agreements that to be valid, the employee has to be given at least 10 days to consider the offer, take advice, and come back to the employer. This helps protect the employee from being rushed by the employer into accepting something that might not be in their best interest.
So I want to talk about negotiations because you mentioned negotiation earlier in your responses. What can an employee realistically expect their trade union advisor or their legal advisor to do as far as negotiation is concerned?
Well, this is where we can really add some value. We've dealt with lots of settlement agreements in the past, and we have a feel for what to expect in agreements and what employees should push for and accept. It's likely that the employer's offer is an opening offer, and employers won't particularly expect the employee to accept that opening offer. So they may be anticipating a little bit of negotiation. From the employee's point of view, we help them to explore what leverage do they have. Why would the employer improve the terms on offer? One scenario is if the employee would otherwise have grounds for a claim against the employer relating to the termination or something that's gone on in the past, which could be used as leverage to increase the terms on offer. Another scenario might be for a long-standing employee who wants to appeal to the employer's better nature and seek a better goodwill payment to compensate them for what could be a time spent being unemployed in the future.
That's great, Ben. So what closing remarks have you got left?
It's worth repeating for an employee who's been told their job's at risk, don't rush, don't make any rash decisions. And there's help out there. There may be family or friends that have been through this situation before that can provide some guidance. We at Thomson Saint Pastoral Employment Team provide employees with advice before termination or after termination, and there's also trade union representatives will be available to members to help them with this scenario. The key thing is to think about the settlement agreement and what's important to you. Is it certain benefits? Is it being able to work freely in the same field after you've left? Is it about getting out as quick as possible, or do you want to hang around and carry out a handover? Think about what's important to you when it comes to responding to your employer in relation to the negotiation of any settlement agreement.
Yes, and I think also sort of around that would be issues to do with what internal and external announcements are going to be made. How would the employee want their announcement to be made? And employers' references are another area where we often find that employees, it really matters to them that something good or honest is said about what they've done during their employment, what they've been particularly good at. And perhaps those are areas of negotiation that can be brought out into the process of agreeing a settlement agreement.
And we often see settlement agreements that will set out the exact wording and even timing of internal and external announcements about the employee's departure. That gives the employee certainty that they know the message that's going to go out about them.
Thanks very much, Ben. I hope for those of you watching, this has been a very useful video, particularly for employees who are facing potential meetings from their employer about moving them on under a managed or agreed exit on financial terms, and that you know a little bit more about what settlement agreements are. We're here to help you, so do get in touch if you have a settlement agreement issued to you and you need some advice. Thank you very much indeed.